Barber is doing kind of the just tip of the spear, job, and he's not given the full context. And then the FFRDCs have a little bit more context,
Yes.
some insulation
Yes.
as far
Yes.
as federal funding. And then above that's the intelligence organizations, and then above that you have like what cabinet level people like Dick
Probably.
Cheney. Like, do you have a sense of like who the equivalent of Dick Cheney is now?
I don't know, but if I had to guess, it'd be
American
somebody with a
Alchemy.
naval background and an intelligence
UAP
community
Gerb
background.
episode.
Interesting.
Tune
It
in.
seems like naval programs have been tip of the spear for a long time and deal with a lot of really sensitive stuff because they also deal with the subject of USO.
Yep.
And that sort of transmedial capability to travel underwater undetected, and their hidden intelligence agency, the NURO, seems very high priority. So I would imagine this is somebody with a joint naval and intelligence community background.
Makes sense. Yeah, Harold Malmgren kept emphasizing that the Office of Naval Intelligence knew way more than meets the eye, and
Tests and details are controlled by naval intelligence.
it's the oldest intelligence agency in the U.S. in the 1890s. And if that was like, at his time, 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
you would think that there would be this through line between then and now. You obviously have, rumors of Bobby Ray Inman,
Yeah.
being sort of involved, with this stuff as well. And so, maybe he would be somebody at the Cheney level.
Do you anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether as time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, there's a possibility.
Let's actually go through a couple of those, like below Cheney, kind of at the tip of the spear for the administrator level.
Yeah.
I think a lot of individuals who have spearheaded or are spearheading or have high-level exposure to UFO legacy programs have extensive backgrounds in the NRO. So I have a couple documents here. Maybe we can go through a couple of these.
Let's do it.
These are just kind of people that I'd love to talk about.
Cool.
So for the NRO, you have... maybe we could start with Bobby Ray Inman, right?
Yeah.
Bobby Ray Inman, when he spoke to Bob Eschler in 1989, 1988, he referred NASA mission specialist Bob Eschler to Sumner Shapiro, director of naval intelligence, as well as R. Everett or R. Evans Heinemann. His naming convention's a little weird. Heinemann was the NRO Program B director from 1982 to 1989. NRO Program B was essentially a consolidation of reconnaissance activities between the NRO and CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology. And the ground element of NRO Program B was established at Pine Gap.
No, I'm sick because I
Australia.
still
Pine
look
Gap.
puffy in the
Super
face,
spooky.
too.
But,
They call it Australia's Area 51.
right. And Bobby Ray Inman basically said, hey, to
Yo,
Eschler,
yo.
if you want to know about crash retrieval programs and recovered technical vehicles, go talk to Heinemann. Other interesting people with high-level connections to the NRO include Donald Kerr. Donald Kerr was mentioned in Oki Shannon's 1985 Advanced Theoretical Physics Working Group documents. This was a physics group held at BDM International in 1985 at their McLean facility. Super interesting thing that apparently like John Alexander spoke at. Stubblebine was involved with all this stuff. And
Output.
and Oki Shannon's notes, it's like, ask Don Kerr for funding when talking about like UFO reverse engineering programs.
Whoa.
Donald Kerr was, of course, high-level position in the NRO. He was director of EG&G. He was director of Los Alamos, director of SAIC, and deputy director of the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology. So there's this specific
Yo, I need to get over this
there's
sickness,
this really
man.
specific weird
I don't like it.
kind of pairing relationship between the
Not
NRO
at
and
all.
the
It's
CIA
not a good look.
DS&T.
Yeah.
And with that CIA DS&T, back in
Look at me looking all
2003,
puffy in the face.
the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology, which maybe we'll describe directorates a little bit. So I said the NRO
Got
had
like the
program B
chills,
at Pine Gap.
slightly
Early days of
body
the NRO, it
aches.
had program A, B, C, and D at a time in the 90s or so.
Congested,
This was
stuffy,
reorganized into
stuffy
directorates,
nose,
just kind of
all of that.
subgroups under the NRO, under the CIA. So I think a lot of UFO legacy programs are stuffed within these directorates. And to speak about the NRO and the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, there's a lot of really weird crossovers there. So I think it's important to look at individuals with connections
Been eating
to
chicken soup
NRO, CIA, DS&T.
Yep.
for the past day.
Two high-level almost cabinet positions within the United States government and
Yeah.
the MITRE Corporation, which is an FFRDC.
Yep.
There's a very tangled web between NRO, DSNT,
Might have to
MITRE,
make some
and
more.
then two
My
offices
girl, she
within
trying to eat
the
nachos
United States
tomorrow.
government I'd like to talk about a little bit.
I don't think
This
that's
would
happening.
be the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment, OSUDANS. This has previously gone through numerous naming conventions as the Office of the Undersecretary for Defense for Acquisition, renamed into the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology, then renamed to the Office of the Undersecretary for Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics, finally to its naming convention today for Acquisition and Sustainment. The AUSTAT, Acquisition and Technology, is the office kind of named in the Wilson Davis notes as holding kind of records to special carve-out holdover programs that housed kind of direct access to legacy programs that Flag Officer Thomas Wilson allegedly started to look through, where he found the Watch Committee, high-level gatekeepers for UFO legacy programs. One of the individuals he spoke about, who was kind of director of the AUSTAT at that time and permanent SAPOC, Special Access Program Oversight Committee member, was Mr. Paul Kaminsky. Paul Kaminsky is an individual that I think would be interesting to look at a little more in regards to UFO legacy programs. He was, of course, in the AUSTAT. He was, of course,
I'm not gonna hold
on the board
y'all.
of trustee for the MITRE Corporation now. And so that the AUSTAT, that's
This year,
named all throughout
I'm
the
trying to
Wilson Davis
get
notes.
like it's catering off
That
the
is a
ground.
Department of Defense position. Its counter position
I
in the
got like
intelligence
everything
community
pretty
is
much
called the DDNI
planned out,
ATNF,
mapped out.
the Deputy Director for National Intelligence for Acquisition, Technology, and Facilities.
Still
So
working on some of the
AUSTAT are
business,
now,
but
notice today, Undersecretary of Defense for
when
Acquisition.
I say that,
and
I just
Sustainment,
mean like
and this
documentation,
DDNI are two sides of the same coin.
certifications.
These two offices, according to the GAO, they have oversight over NRO program acquisitions. Okay,
Interesting.
so that DDNI ATNF is rather interesting. On one hand, you have Paul Kaminsky, who was AUSTAT and MITRE. On the other hand, you have somebody like Don Meyerix right here, who is MITRE and DDNI ATNF with a long agency background, very weird agency background.
Former deputy director of the CIA for Science and Technology, and we know a couple of connections there. Is Glenn Gaffney, obviously director of Science and Technology for the CIA.
Are any of you willing to name specific gatekeepers within the root cell of the UAP-SAP Federation?
I have a name for you.
Go ahead.
Glenn Gaffney, CIA.
Lynn Gaffney, CIA.
Now you have all this congressional testimony that he specifically, blocked this, moving of exotic, non-human origin technology that was under Lockheed. That was supposed to go to Bigelow Aerospace in 2008, and
Right.
Glenn Gaffney
Two
apparently
separate
blocked
times.
this. Oh,
2008,
twice!
2010.
Wow, crazy.
And you can thank the Aero Historical Report Volume 1 for talking that out. 2008, it seems there was a first attempt that was blocked by James Clapper.
Whoa.
The second event was the Kona Blue failed PSAPR.
So
Prospective
James
Special Access
Clapper
Program.
blocked
That's
a
what the
movie?
Aero Historical Report Volume 1 says.
Well, that's interesting because isn't James Clapper in the Age of Disclosure
Indeed.
movie? So what's up with that?
I don't
Why
know.
does he play
I don't
both
know.
sides?
General Clapper, the former DNI in the documentary. I certainly applaud him for at least speaking out in general. He goes on, I believe, I've only seen clips of Age of Disclosure, not the whole thing, where there was a program when he was the Director of National Intelligence where they were tracking these vehicles over Area 51, of course, the famed classified test location. And I'm a little bit disappointed as a fellow Air Force officer, and certainly General Clapper.
This runny nose ain't
ranks
cool,
as
son.
three-star
I hate
general.
that.
That's all he said in the documentary, that was a program he was aware of. In fact, without being inappropriate, I will say that General Clapper was well aware of the crash retrieval issue, managed the crash retrieval issue, and when he was the DNI, USDI, and DIA director, he placed people in critical roles to manage this issue, both publicly and I'll just say non-publicly as well. And I'll allow the audience distill what I'm saying at the risk of being inappropriate or going too far with my discussion.
The Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, calls me, Mike, I need you to go through all of it. I need the team to go through all of NSA's holding all of its files, and I need everything that you have on UFOs. And I'm like, what, sir? You want me to do a review of our databases on UFOs?
We interrupt this broadcast for a very important briefing. You've been selected purely at random and definitely not monitored to attend a routine and following one. You're a bunch more.
Recall
Western New York definitely has a huge need for.
Oh yeah, Bills
veterinary
won today
technicians.
too.
Practices are desperate.
Blue has had direct
Just in case y'all
involvement in
forgot.
blocking UFO legacy
Buffalo
programs.
Bills, baby.
Recall the excellent reporting of Christopher Sharp, UK journalist.
Yes.
He broke a great story about the CIA's Office of Global Access,
Yes,
which was
yeah,
created under the DS&T in the year 2003.
Yeah.
That is basically tasked with foreign UFO crash retrievals. This is a logistics agency. This is a combat support agency. So, let's just say in Honduras,
That's
an
a word
exchange
that
craft goes
sounds
down,
wrong.
The CIA OGA would be responsible for
I
getting,
can name a couple, but
JSOC Tier 1
I don't want to
adjacent
get
assets, and
flagged.
probably the Department of Energy Nuclear Emergency Support Team and other assets down to retrieve the craft. Do you know the first director of OGA, the Office of Global Access?
Is that Doug Wolf?
This is Doug Wolf. Do you know Doug Wolf additionally spent 16 years in the NRO? He was the executive assistant to the director of the National Reconnaissance Office.
Whoa.
He was indeed CIA DS&T deputy director. He indeed started the OGA.
Whoa.
And indeed, he was the DDNI ATNF, the deputy director for National Intelligence for Acquisition, Technology, and Facilities. Who has
Whoa.
direct oversight over NRO acquisitions.
Crazy.
There's a ton of people like that. There's an individual named Mark Moynihan. If you find him on LinkedIn, he's a total spook of spooks. This guy, DDNI, ATNF. This guy, CIA, OGA, CIA, DS&T, NRO. So there seems to be this really interesting relationship with people who have been labeled as UFO Legacy Program gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And one of those gatekeeping offices, the DS&T and the NRO.
It seems like this revolving door old boys club where you go from the DS&T of the CIA to MITRE Corporation or some other federally funded research and development. You go to RAND or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's
or you go to the NRO or
I can't stress this enough about the importance of MITRE.
Yeah.
The DOE national labs, Sandia, Oak Ridge, Lawrence Livermore, Los Alamos, those are critical. But the importance of MITRE, MITRE is the most overlooked entity in all of this subject.
Why do you think that is?
Because they deal with naval programs.
Interesting.
Subject of USO.
And what's their role with respect to the Navy? Is it like tech protection or is it
probably everything?
UFO related stuff? Or
INDUSEC, industrial security, to SAP management, to monitoring large craft under the water, to material exploitation, to briefing, oversight channels that exist. To doing all sorts of stuff. The MITRE pipeline of people who have worked for MITRE, as you can see, Paul Kaminsky, Don Meyerix, Donald Kerr, numerous people who have allegedly been associated with UFO legacy programs end up at MITRE.
Well, it's funny. I know them in the context of holding these anti-gravity conferences.
Yeah.
And I think Ning Li spoke at one in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
She was this famous Chinese American, anti-gravity researcher at University of Alabama, Huntsville. She claimed to make all these breakthroughs in weight reduction above a
internal
spinning
mass reduction,
superconductor.
right? Yeah.
Amazing. And or I think it's weight reduction, which is a little distinct from mass reduction.
You're right. Yes.
But yes, same sort of ridiculously crazy concept if you can do it.
Yeah.
And she's saying all this stuff about gravitons and sort of these alternating current rotating superconductors. She's saying she wants to create free energy for the world. She's citing Hal Puthoff and talking about electrically polarizable vacuums and stuff. And then she gets a contract, I believe, with the Army. She gets a security clearance, and then nobody ever really hears from her again. She gets hit by a car. It's sort of really weird. But she was seen last publicly speaking at this MITRE Corporation conference about anti-gravity.
Yeah, I admit it, and I did sit down and I interviewed her, and this was at a conference in 2003 just outside of Washington, D.C., run by overseen by the MITRE Corporation, and it was looking at, I think, high-frequency gravitational waves, and she was an interesting character because she had been involved in some of those NASA experiments I mentioned earlier about rotating superconductors and weight loss experiments, and she chaired one of the sessions. I talked to her afterwards about it all. She had this view that this was science and technology that should be for the people. It should be very philanthropic in its nature and outcomes. And then I don't know sort of how soon after that it was that she sort of went off grid. It was certainly probably about within a year that she just disappeared, and no one knew what happened to her.
That's like just recently there was a slide deck, not really leaked, but kind of rediscovered about Eric Davis doing a teleportation study for the MITRE Corporation, dated back to 2019.
And so because you have people online like Ashton Forbes who like talk a lot about teleportation, like he's really sure that like you could teleport like a macro scale human being or something. When I've spoken to Eric Davis, he seems to be, like talking about like quantum teleportation, saying like that's already established science, and that sounds insane because the word teleportation is in it, but like, is that necessarily involved in like UFO tech, or is it even,
I don't know.
Yeah.
So much of the science and physics is so far beyond me.
Me too.
As boring as it sounds, I like the money. I like the program names. I like the offices. Because while we're speaking about kind of these administrators, NRO, CIA, DS&T, and kind of their string pullers, and the DD&I, ATNF, and ALSTAT are now OUSD, ANS, you talked about Kona Blue, which was the failed prospective special access program that occurred in 2010, and we can actually thank Arrow for releasing that slide deck, weirdly enough. This was to be a DHS-sponsored USAP, Unacknowledged Special Access Program, for Lockheed Martin to divulge some craft materials to the OSAP program and Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Studies, BASS. And these materials were supposed to be bits and pieces of craft hull, craft bulkhead. I myself have heard this involved the Kingman wreckage from the 1953 Kingman, Arizona crash, and that Lockheed Martin Vice President James Ryder was the one who wanted to get rid of the materials for who knows. And conventionally, Glenn Gaffney, CIA DS&T Deputy Director, was the one who put the kibosh and killed this. Our mutual friend Rob Jones has done some amazing work. He also offers in the name Robert Cardillo, who is actually DD&I and head of the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And while I think Robert Cardillo was absolutely involved, and people should go look up Robert Cardillo if they're unfamiliar with him, I think this was a DS&T operation, specifically Glenn Gaffney, to put the kibosh on this. So in my Lockheed project, while looking into Kona Blue, I kind of came across that there may have been a conflict of interest within Lockheed Martin, maybe an insider in Lockheed who helped put the kibosh on the program. This is an individual, and I'll pass you this in a second, named Mary K. Sturtevant. This is a name that it was never really floated around. I made a tweet about this, begging Chris Mellon to give some information on her, to which he has declined in both a public outreach on Twitter and private messages. I have not heard from him.
What did he say?
No, he just nothing.
Oh, nothing. Okay, no response.
Nothing. So Sturtevant here has a really weird history. She worked at the BDM Corporation. In 1985, she joined the agency. When I say agency, I mean CIA, for counterintelligence, tech protection, all that stuff. She kind of she worked in joint CIA Directorate of Operations and CIA Directorate of Science and Technology programs. She was a very high-level deputy director position in the NRO. And then she also served on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, where she and Chris Mellon actually worked together for numerous years. Not only did they work together, but they attended many of the same meetings. Not only did they attend many of the same meetings, but over certain periods and quarters, they have the exact same per diem, which implies that they traveled together, they ate together, they attended the same meetings together on the same cars, the same craft. So I would wager these two have a very they know each other quite well. She was also served as a special advisor to the president under George W. Bush. And in 2006, she joined Lockheed Martin as the vice president for government affairs from 2006 to 2021, as well as VP for intelligence, joint science and technology programs. So I think there may have been a conflict of interest here within Lockheed Martin. Once you're agency for life, right? If you're in the CIA, you're never out of the CIA, especially the Directorate of Science and Technology. So I think there's a very strong argument that can be made that due to her obligations and allegiance to the CIA DS&T, she had to help put the kibosh on this technology transfer. And also,
but you think of, if she knew Mellon, I mean, you think of Mellon also as very pro, kind of UFO stuff, at least now.
What I would say to Christopher Mellon, if he's watching this, because I've asked him numerous times, ask her again, Mr. Mellon, because I'm sure this time she'll remember.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
I'm sure this time she'll remember.
Yeah.
And here is Mary Sturtevant.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I mean, you often do see people kind of playing both sides of the issue as well.
Yeah.
Like, you hear about, Mike Turner, who put the kibosh on, this last, or UAPDA, not this last one, but the one before it.
Right,
Mike,
2020, fiscal year 2024, I believe.
that's right. And, you hear that, like, the people, the largest donors to his campaign are like,
Chicken
Lockheed,
Soup, baby,
Lockheed,
for the
Boeing,
song.
whatever.
And the
And
call.
simultaneously, you have Lockheed clearly trying to get a bunch of information out through efforts like, they spent a lot of time with Tom DeLonge and TTSA and that sort of thing, secret machines. And so it seems like they do want some disclosure to occur, obviously, when it comes to eminent domain clauses in the UAPDA that involve taking their material and, making it kind of, congressional civilian oversight, they're obviously not going to be happy about that. But it is interesting how they're trying to sort of manage the process.
Yeah, it seems like there's numerous factions competing for disclosure. One of the most obvious factions is TTSA, which involves the whole OSAP crew, Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, all these guys. Their carefully managed disclosure seems to be about the revelations of the existence of non-human intelligence and technical vehicles, and that there's programs to recover these, but no discussion of derivation of technologies, possibly for national security concerns or whatever they want to say. And they really like to pose the whole NHI or super national security threat narrative. The whole TTSA saga is very weird. It seems like in 2011, Tom DeLonge was plucked. This could have been an old BASS, Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Space Studies project. They had some of their documents under OSAP kind of not leaked, but discovered. And there was discussion of a project forum within those, which was to basically in California take, celebrities, media personalities, popular people to start talking about the UFO subject. And I think that likely Tom DeLonge and TTSA was a holdover project forum spearheaded by Lou Elizondo under direction of something like the National Security Council to bring forth limited disclosures. TTSA is wacky when you look at it. Tom DeLonge had numerous high-level advisors, whether it was somebody like Lou Elizondo, a whole history in counterintelligence, guys like Steve Justice from Lockheed Martin, high-level Air Force generals, and these guys were saying, hey, all of these technologies are locked up in black budgets, but we don't really know how to do it, but we're gonna try and make our own, like Lightcraft, we're gonna try and make our own ARVs and all that. So it just seems almost like a bastardization of what legacy programs had doing, like like all these guys, Steve Justice, who had worked in programs or been exposed to them, had amnesia, and they had to kind of start all over again in the public sector.
There were clearly guys involved in that who had ulterior motives, and then I think some people don't give Tom DeLonge enough credit for modern disclosure, because so many people just wouldn't even be into the subject, I think, if it weren't for a lot of what he got out. And I do think he, on his own, organically made a ton of connections, poked the bear a lot to the effect of a lot of these guys coming out to him, and he kind of, I think, put a lot of this stuff together. And so maybe there are ulterior motives with some of the people involved, but I don't think Tom had ulterior motives. I think he had very genuine,
he was a trailblazer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I also think a strong argument can be made. He was exposed to some pretty radical stuff, whether this was authorized or unauthorized disclosures. If you look at his appearance on Joe Rogan back in 2017, October of 2017, this was like the radical time that he came out and talked about TTSA. There's something that really caught my eye there, and I think a strong argument can be made. Tom DeLonge was exposed to elements of Immaculate Constellation.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
We know Immaculate Constellation as the USAT Matthew Brown was exposed to. That began in 2017, that utilized U.S. Intelligence platforms, overhead platforms, implying NRO with spy satellites and overhead collection platforms, probably NGA, and numerous various intelligence gathering systems to monitor both non-human craft and alien reproduction vehicles. There are plenty of interesting cases, including slowly rotating triangles over Indo-PACOM, Indo-Pacific Command, within Matthew Brown's Immaculate Constellation document, saucer-shaped craft seemingly using cloud coverage as cover and all that. So, but the connection I'm trying to make, and why I think a strong argument Tom DeLonge was exposed to Immaculate Constellation in 2017, the year IMCON began, is if you listen closely to that Joe Rogan interview, Tom DeLonge talks about episodic visits of craft. He says that his high-level sources, in the NRO specifically, told him that scientists and eggheads had figured out ways to basically pre-predict when and where craft would appear, and thus satellites and imagery intelligence platforms would capture these quote-unquote episodic visits.
Whoa.
His connections to the NRO. Whilst he was at TTSA, Lou Elizondo was liaison to the NRO. He was liaison to the NRO.
Whoa, I don't think a lot of people know that.
No, that's not public knowledge. But yeah, he was liaison to the NRO.
How'd you figure that out?
Curriculum, CV.
Okay.
CV.
Okay.
Liaison to the NRO. And if you look at the Immaculate Constellation documents, numerous sightings talk about how the sensor collection platform seemingly had foreknowledge of the event, almost like the system was put in place